Shelly here, and it is time for your Friday Foundation Fix, where you can get your fix of foundation reviews in between foundation fests. Today I'm going to check out a new release from Laura Geller. It is the Filter First Luminous Foundation, and it's gonna be a twofer, because I also picked up the concealer in this line. I've got the foundation in the shade Buff, I've got the concealer in the shade Light, and I'm going to check them out today. I'm on Ulta's website right now. This retails for $38 US. It's got 5 stars out of 5, even though there's only 4 reviews right now, because it's a new release. You get 1 fluid ounce of product. It comes in 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12 shades. Womp womp. Maybe they'll release more. Not a great shade range. But one thing that I thought was interesting was in the description here. Let me just give you some of the info about it. It's a breakthrough foundation that creates the perfect canvas for skin. My canvas isn't for skin. My canvas is for makeup. My canvas is the skin. That doesn't make sense. Medium coverage foundation formulated with Illumismooth technology. I love when they make up words. Fabric-like technology that enhances and perfects skin without masking your overall complexion. Weightless fluid drop, maintains light and color purity, natural looking finish, micro pearls, light shifting, naturally perfected skin, a whole lot of superlatives going here. This is the part that I thought was interesting. Who is it for? Fit for women and men of all skin tones, offering multiple neutral shades to cover a wide spectrum. Okay, 12 shades is not covering a wide spectrum, but I was impressed that they said it is made for women and men. Props. Kudos, Laura Geller, because makeup is for whoever wants to wear makeup. It does not matter who you are. You could even be more inclusive in that statement, but I'm just going to give them props for going as far as they did. So we're looking for medium coverage. We're looking for pearls, luminous, dewy finish I'm expecting. They do mention that there's grapeseed oil in here, powerful anti-aging and antioxidant. If you tend to react to having oils in your skincare or your makeup, be aware of that. It's also got aloe vera, vitamin E, no animal-derived ingredients, that means vegan, and no fragrance, no gluten, no parabens, no mineral oil, no soy, no nanos? I don't know what those are. Someday I will look that up. So this shade Buff that I've got is not the lightest shade. There are 2 shades lighter. This one is described as lightest beige with a balance of pink and yellow undertones. They do have a shade called Porcelain that is a pink undertoned fair shade, and they have another fair shade called Ivory. So if you are paler than me, there are options that are lighter than this. I have a little bit of a tan still from my travels, so I did not go with the lightest shade in this one. But with only 12 shades, basically they don't go super deep. There's only one even remotely deep looking shade, and the rest are, I would say, light to medium. So, but this is not the lightest, so keep that in mind, and let's take a look at some swatches and see how this one compares to some of the others in my collection. Swatch time. First up is today's foundation, the Laura Geller Filter First Luminous Foundation in the 3rd lightest shade, Buff. Next I've got the MAC Studio Sculpt in shade NW15, just about a shade lighter, but a very similar undertone. Definitely cool. Third is the Lancome Renergie Lift. This is in a warm undertone, shade number 250, Bisque Warm. This is about the same lightness to darkness, maybe a smidge darker, and a warmer yellow undertone. Fourth is the Estee Lauder Double Wear Stay in Place in 1C1 Cool Bone. Just a little bit lighter, but a similar cool undertone. And last I've got the IT Cosmetics CC Plus Cream, the original in Fair, which is definitely a warm undertone and slightly lighter than this shade. I am starting out with a 43-year-old face. I've got some fine lines, especially on my forehead. My smile lines are pretty deep that I like to hide and disguise. I got the beginnings of crow's feet that usually don't show up unless my foundation is pretty drying. I do have some texture, especially on this side of my face. This is the driving side of my face, which also has a bit more sun damage. And I do have enlarged pores on my cheeks here and my chin. I have a little bit of texture in between my eyebrows that likes to give me trouble. So that's kind of the face that I am starting out with, things that I like to cover up or minimize with my foundations. I am going to go in on one side of my face with a sponge. This is my Real Techniques Miracle Complexion Sponge. If you've been missing the Eco Tool sponges, so have I. The cats have stolen them all. I don't know where they are. Real Techniques it is. And for the brush side, I will use the It Cosmetics, what the heck is the name of this? The Full Coverage Complexion Brush. I know it looks dirty, but it actually has some kind of skincare. That's what that orangish color is on the end. It's kind of bizarre. I do like this brush, but a little bit weird. Whatevs. I've already primed with the Laura Geller Spackle Blur Stick Primer. This is the Hydrate version. I have normal skin this time of year. I tend toward dry skin, and I right now do have some dry patches because I did not bring all of my retinol and acids in my skincare routine for the 7 weeks that I was traveling. Now that I've come back home and reincorporated those, they're a little bit harsh on my skin now, and my skin has to build back up to the tolerance. So I've got some dry patches around my eyes, around my nose, and so that is what we're dealing with. But I was using this primer constantly while I was traveling in Ireland, and I actually really like it. Super lightweight, does not dry out my skin, but it nicely blurs texture and pores. And since we're having a Laura Geller kind of day, I figured we'll have a Laura Geller kind of day. Packaging is nice. We've got a frosted glass bottle. We do have a pump. I like pumps. They keep your product clean, sanitary. You don't get air inside of it, so you're going to get the longest life out of it as possible. And let's see how this guy works. Pretty liquidy. Coverage is definitely pretty light with the sponge, but it is blending out very easily. This is darker than I expected it to be. It'll probably match me pretty well with my tan, but that's the one thing with a shade range that isn't very extensive. The light shades might not be super light. Let's go in on the brush side. The brush side is definitely having better coverage, but it is clinging to dry patches. Let's see, I have a little bit of product left over from those two pumps. Let me try and even out this side a little bit with the brush, and then I think I would like to blend over everything with the sponge. This is a very pretty finish. It is luminous without looking super dewy or shiny. It is very skin-like. It is clinging a little bit to dry patches, but the sponge does help that just a little bit. It looks a little bit heavy on my nose, and I think that's because I actually have dry patches on my nose. It is doing a very nice job at blurring the texture, especially on the driving side of my face that is more sort of crepey. It is not settling into lines at this point. It's minimizing pores just a little bit. I can still see my pores. I could use a little bit more blurring there, but they are slightly minimized. I think they're very nicely smoothed over at least. The texture between my eyebrows, it is clinging just a little bit there. And overall my forehead looks okay. Nothing to speak of really on texture or anything like that. In general, I think it looks pretty good starting out. I wish I did not have dry patches that it was clinging to, but I think generally speaking, I like it so far. Let's take a look at the concealer. It's got a sort of cushion tip to it. It's one of these twisties. I would normally prime my under eyes with the Becca Anti-Fatigue Under Eye Primer, but I'm not going to do that because I would like to see what this concealer does on its own. Blended out quite nicely. There's not a ton of dark circle coverage. I'm going to go in with just a smidge more and blend with my fingertip right on the darkest part of my dark circles. I'd say light to medium coverage on the concealer. It feels nice and hydrating. It's not making my under eye look crepey. It did blend nicely into the foundation. I don't see any kind of seam or anything where the two meet. It looks nice. I think the shade is a good match for this foundation shade, just not super coverage, not a ton of coverage going on here, but it is pretty. I think I am going to have to set this. It's still a bit tacky, so I am going to set this with powder. I'm gonna go put the rest of my face on. Let's check the time. 2:53 p.m. Let's call it 2:50 so that I remember, and then I'll be right back. Okay, we are back. I just sneezed 3,004 times, so I apologize if I sound like a frog or whatever it is I sound like right now. But let's take a look at how everything worked with the foundation. I did end up setting it with my Laura Geller Balance and Brighten. This is in the shade Porcelain. I need to buy one darker shade of this for this time of year because this is my all-time favorite setting powder. I know it's a foundation, but it sets beautifully. Love it, love it. Foundation is still clinging to dry patches, which I've got on my nose and I've got kind of around my eyes and my upper lip. So if you have texture that's caused by dry patches, the foundation definitely does cling to it. It is otherwise blurring texture, so just the texture of my skin is very nicely blurred. I really like the finish. The powder did take away a little bit of the luminosity, but I'm hoping that as I wear it for a little while, it will come back as everything sort of settles down. Setting spray would probably do the same thing, but I don't feel the need to do that, so I'm not going to set it with setting spray. And everything looks pretty well so far. I did not have any trouble blending anything on top of the foundation. Again, the concealer blended just fine. No issues there. So on the rest of my face, I've got the Balm Desert as my bronzer. Thank you so much. You guys recommended this to me way back in the day, and I absolutely love it. My blush is the Laura Geller Tropic Hues. I love this shade. It's subtle. You could build it up if you want to, but you don't have to. Why does my mirror keep going off? Highlight. Remember this old favorite, Laura Geller? This is the Diamond Dust. Oh, it's so pretty. It's like a pink shift highlight. It is on my inner corners and on top of my cheekbones. My eyes, first time using the Born to Run palette. And if any of you say, please give a tutorial on this eye look, it's going to be impossible because I just kept adding colors, and every color I added made me want to add more colors, and I have no idea how I even did this or what even happened just now. There are all kinds of colors on my eyeballs. Love first impression of that palette. Love, love. Mascara is the Laura Geller Lash Boss. I did use two Laura Geller liners. These are the gel waterproof liners, the Incredible line. One is gray, the other is Fade to Gray, and this one is purple. Purple Rain. Purple Rain's in my lower waterline. I did not tightline my upper waterline. I just realized. Oh, wellsies. Lip is the Urban Decay Hi-Fi Shine. This is in the shade Backtalk, and I can't stop with these. Can't stop, won't stop. That is where we are at. I will come back in a little bit with a daylight check-in, and I'll be back at the end of the night with my final thoughts. Hey guys, daylight check-in here. It's been a little over 3.5 hours at this point, and here is your check-in for color match purposes. I think this is a pretty good color match for the amount of sun that I currently have, and so that is good. The foundation looks really nice so far. It's got still that nice sort of luminous finish to it. It does still cling to dry patches, but like I was hoping it did, as my skin kind of warmed up to it, settle down and doesn't look as sort of patchy on those dry patch areas, though it still does cling to them. But I do think it looks very nice, and I am really liking it so far. So that is where we're at about 3.5 hours, and I'll be back tonight with my final thoughts. 11:15 p.m. Let's see how the Laura Geller Filter First Luminous Foundation and Concealer held up. First off, I want to say the concealer, my under eye has not looked this smooth and not dry since I don't remember when, and that is with no under eye primer whatsoever. So even though the concealer doesn't give a ton of coverage, I would not say it's full coverage, I'd say it's light to medium coverage. If you've got a dry under eye, girl, boy, yes, it is smooth. For the foundation, let's get a close-up look. We are just past the 9-hour mark, and this foundation does not have a heck of a lot of staying power. It's basically broken up just about everywhere there's movement on my face. So coverage has worn away and sort of gathered in my chin. It has broken up around my mouth. It's definitely broken up on my upper lip. And on my upper lip, it is still clinging to dry patches as it was earlier. It's broken up and caking up around my nose. It looks very heavy and splotchy on my nose. My cheeks still look fine. It's still blurring texture there. The texture between my eyebrows does not look too bad, but it is clinging to the dry patches there. My forehead looks okay, but in general, it's just breaking down anywhere where there's movement. I would say it lasted fairly well up until about the 7-hour mark. I could always try using setting sprays and things like that to extend the wear. The primer I used was primarily a blurring primer and not necessarily a primer to help the staying power. But that said, it doesn't have a ton of staying power on its own. It's pretty well broken up at the 9-hour mark. At a distance, it doesn't look awful, but close up, it really looks like the makeup is breaking down. On the bright side, for dry skin, definitely comfortable. This definitely feels moisturizing. I don't see my crow's feet really at all. So my skin is no drier or less hydrated than it was this morning when I put this on. So that is a good sign. If you have dry skin without dry patches, I think this is a wonderful formula in terms of the hydration and the comfort level. It does cling to dry patches, so if you've got dry patches, I don't see that there's going to be any way to get around that. I think the finish of this foundation is beautiful. It is luminous without looking dewy or too sweaty. I just don't like that sweaty kind of a look. I think it's a very pretty foundation. In terms of settling into lines, it only settled into, I call it my fat lines, my deeper chin lines, did not settle into my smile lines, did not settle into my forehead lines, did not settle into my crow's feet area. So fine lines, I would say it does not really settle into lines, only into the very deepest movement lines. So mature skin, I think it blurs texture nicely. It does an okay job of blurring pores, not super great, but not terrible. It does a little bit of blurring, does not settle into fine lines, has a very beautiful finish. So this is one of those that it's got so many great things for dry and maturing skin. The cons, the downsides of it, are really sort of performance-based, and my grading system is generally really pumping on those things that dry and maturing skin need in order for a product to be successful. So I'm going to go on the higher side on this one. I'm going to go B. Solid B. This performs, I would say, above average for dry and maturing skin. It's got some downsides. Maybe with other product combinations, we could get it up to A-level status. This is one that I am definitely going to wear more and play around with and see how else I can get it to work on my skin, because I feel like it's super comfortable, super lightweight. I have not felt it all day long. If I can get it to wear a little bit longer and my dry patches clear up, I will be one of the happiest people on earth, because I think in that scenario, this is a beautiful foundation. So there you have it. If I had to give a grade to the Laura Geller Filter First Luminous Foundation, I would give it a solid B. This concealer, this was only a first impression, so I will continue to play with it, but my first impression is solid A if you need a light to medium coverage concealer. So happiness on this launch from Laura Geller. Some good stuff here. If you like foundation reviews and would like to see more of them, give me a thumbs up down below. If you've got suggestions for foundations you would like to see me take a look at, leave them down in the comments. You could always check out my website, geekoutofwater.com. There's a Foundation Fest link with a ranked, sortable, searchable spreadsheet of all of my foundation reviews. Be sure that you scroll that thing because it scrolls to the side and you can see all the data in the spreadsheet. And I've got over 100 foundations on there at this point. Holy cow. Didn't we agree that we were gonna like have a party or something for the 100 foundation mark? Yeah, we're gonna have to do that one of these days because there's a lot of foundations on there. As always, thanks a lot for taking some time out of your day to geek out over makeup with me. Please subscribe if you haven't already. I appreciate your time, and I hope you guys all have an awesome day or night wherever you are in the world. Take care of each other. Bye-bye.